Hello and welcome to the Alexandra Wenman show. I am so delighted to introduce you to my guest today. I am honored to have Pam Gregory. I don't think Pam needs any introduction, really. I mean, she's an astrologer of 45 years and high honors and two books under her belt. And I think that never before, Pam, has your work been so prevalent as now. So
Going crazy.
I want to. It's absolutely crazy. I want to dive straight in. Obviously, it's clear to me, having watched your videos over the years, that you do a lot of service work for this planet through your astrology, and you really are geared towards looking at the bigger picture and trying to help the collective as a whole. And I just want to honor that. I think that's absolutely just where we all need to be now. But I want to ask you, what got you started in astrology in the first place? What pulled you into it?
Yeah, it was. I'd always been on a bit of a spiritual journey, really, from about the age of 7, bizarrely. But the thing about astrology was, after university, I wanted to emigrate to Canada, to Toronto, and I got on a plane with $100 and didn't know anyone, and way before the days of mobile phones or any of that. And landed in Toronto, and within the first week, I joined a yoga class. And at the end of the class, a couple of the girls said, "That chap over there is an astrologer, and he's a big guy from Jamaica." And I went over and said, "Look, I know nothing about this, but I would love you to do my chart." And the next weekend, I spent 7 hours with him. And it just
Wow.
blew me away, cracked open my world, and I haven't stopped since.
So, did becoming an astrologer turn up in your astrology chart?
Well, yeah, there's some, there's certain degrees, certain indications that come up again and again with astrologers. But yeah, it's not the first time I've done this, I think. I've been around the track a couple of times, I think.
I think so as well. I Something that I work on as a channel, and I know you work with a lot of channels, and I'm guessing you have your own very clear channeling abilities as well, but we'll dive into that. But something that my guides have constantly said to me is that as divine beings, we can transcend anything, that we don't have to put ourselves in boxes. And would you say this is true of astrology as well, that we're never stuck in it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, lovely, Alexandra. I really like that, because increasingly I'm saying that astrology is just 50% of the picture. And we really are the co-creators, because also, even if you regard your birth chart as the sheet of music, we have a great deal of latitude, a great deal of free will in how we play that sheet of music. We can butcher it with a spoon on a tin box, or we can play it absolutely magnificently, little life or a big life. And that's a lot of latitude in how we play it. So yeah, it's absolutely, in my view, having done tens of thousands of charts, it is not fated. It's there as potential, pure raw potential, as modeling clay, the sheet of music, for you to create with, or with which is better grammar, with which you can then go on and create a wonderful life. But it's down to us. There's nothing that's limiting and fated about the chart. In fact, very often it's people with the most challenging charts, with lots of squares and oppositions and difficult aspects, that achieve the most spiritual growth, because it's like they have a lot of grit in the oyster
Yeah,
that
love that.
makes them go on deeper pathways and produce these beautiful pearls for the world. Whereas if they have a lot of trines and it's been easy, maybe this is just an easier lifetime for them, which I look forward to at some point. Maybe it's just a kind of cruising lifetime this time around. But the greatest spiritual growth very often comes from a lot of challenging aspects in the chart. And very often people have had very challenging childhoods. And the way to look at that is really that your childhood was your fertilizer, it was your fuel. So to keep the facts the same, but to turn it around from, poor me, I had this terrible time, to, my goodness, that was such rich fertilizer to make me the person I am today, can turn that whole thing around from victim to somebody who's stepped into their power. And
I
I
love
think that's really important, keep all the information, all the facts, all the things that happen the same, but give it different meaning.
it's all part of your perception, isn't it? We can see the glass as half empty or half full, can't we? And I love that. I love that so much. I wonder as well, from your, just in terms of your belief, do you believe that as a soul we choose the astrology we're born into?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I truly do. I believe it in my bones. And it was confirmed by, I have a friend, Janet Trelaw, who channels Zachariah and has done for many, many years. And he's a very evolved being. And he actually said that the moment of our incarnation is very specific to, I think he said 5 minutes either side and within about 3 kilometers, something. It was very, very specific. So if you're going to be born on the side of a road, you will be born on the side of a road, because that's the birth chart for this lifetime. So even with the medical interventions we have, apparently our soul chooses that particular moment. The moment of death has more options. It isn't as specific because there are more options that come up with Pluto and Neptune transits. But the moment of birth, which Zach confirmed, is very precise.
That
Yeah.
is amazing, because I actually died at birth. So it was like a double gateway. And I do believe that's one of the reasons why I think it was set up that way. So I would come in very, very open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a hard Pluto aspect to your ascendant?
So I've printed off my chart from your website. Thank you very much.
Okay. Because Pluto is death and rebirth and trauma. And when it's in a hard aspect, like conjunction, square, opposition, or even some of the minor hard aspects to the ascendant, the point of incarnation, very often there is a real life and death survival issue around your birth into this world.
Wow. Well, my rising sign is 8 degrees Aries and my Pluto is 13 degrees Libra.
Okay, well, that's it. That's the square.
Right. Okay.
So there we go.
That's it. Damn it. Why did I choose that? What was I thinking?
Yeah, but that's the spiritual growth. You came in already open. And, I had a very traumatic birth as well. I really didn't want to incarnate and they kept turning me around and no, I'm not coming out that way.
We both turned around and tried to climb back out.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. Well. No, I'm not going back. Not again. And not again as a woman. I think that was the thing for me. I was like, I don't want to be a girl again. Don't do it. I love it. I'm just looking at my other questions. So one of the things I'm really itching to ask you, because angels are really my bag and I love them and I communicate with them all the time. And I know that you've spoken quite extensively about Manwe and Manwe's effects on what's going on the planet at the moment. Can you talk to me a little bit about the astrology of angels? Is there astrology that kind of explains angels, or
There isn't yet, although I think that what we're moving into could get to that point. I mean, certainly in people's charts, if they have a very strong emphasized Neptune, that is to do with altered states. It's to do with the divine, the spiritual, oneness, unconditional love, things that aren't tangible, the whole spirit world. So that would give me a very good indicator that this person, spirituality is a very big part of their life. I couldn't determine whether it was angels or particular guides, but nevertheless, and actually Neptune can express either very, very beautifully and positively, taking someone on the spiritual path and exploring spirit, or it can be the shadow side of exploring spirit.
Okay.
Drink and drugs, so it's, but it's still spirit, which is bizarre. So it expresses one way or the other. So there isn't as yet a specific astrological significator for angels, although Manwe comes close because he's the highest archangel, closest to the mind of God, highest source of divine intelligence. So I think with these Kuiper belt objects, the further out we go in space, the more we are going to feel that spiritual information, that spiritual connection. So that could be a very good question for the future in terms of what's coming.
My guides are talking to me now, and it's an interesting take on it. So they're saying that astrology is actually one of the languages that the galactics use to communicate with us. Would you say that is your take on it as well?
Absolutely. Gosh, that's thrilling because, wow. Yeah, that's thrilling, because if you look at something like the pyramids of Egypt, that are very aligned with specific constellations in the sky, many people believe that the galactics came down and they built the pyramids in astronomical language, but also astrological language, because that was a universal language. You know, they didn't build it in French or Latin or Spanish. They built it in astronomical and astrological language because they knew that would ultimately be a universal language for humanity. And it's very sacred too. And, you know, I have been told I was one of those early arrivals from the heavens who worked with the mathematicians and intuitives in building the pyramids. You know, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I have a very strong sense of it.
Yeah, they're confirming it. And it was interesting because I've written a whole chapter in my book on the sacred geometry and the mathematics and the mathematics of angels that kind of proves the existence of angels and life beyond the physical. And I think we're
Wow.
singing from the same hymn sheet because it's very mathematical, isn't it? Astrology.
Very, very, all
Yeah.
about geometry. You know, my bread and butter is archetypes and geometry. That's what gives me the meaning in a birth chart. Yeah, wow,
I
that's
love
wonderful.
it.
That's really
One of my
wonderful.
guides is Imhotep, and he was very much an astrologer, an astronomer, an architect. He was a poet and a philosopher, and he was very involved in the building of the Saqqara, the step pyramid, to my knowledge. But he's, I think, one of the ones coming in and talking now, and he's basically saying, yes, he
Wow.
can confirm all of this. I didn't expect them to show up so much so clearly in the interview, by the way. This doesn't always happen. Sometimes they'll throw in a question, but they're being very clear. They're basically saying, you know, that you are a teacher, that you've come here to really teach people about this. And they're saying that the beauty of the astrology is that it's like the mathematics, it's irrefutable. It cannot be refuted. My goosebumps are going crazy. They're saying this is because it's a solid scientific language. There is, people might say it's nonsense, but when you show them the hard evidence, they cannot refute it. And this is the clear parameters. There just feels like there's a lot more that sorry, I didn't mean to give you a
No,
really
no,
big
this is, go on. This is wonderful.
but
Thoroughly enjoying it.
it feels like there's going to be a lot more coming through for you, that you're going to be teaching people about this in the future. There's a lot more that you're going to be learning about it as well, which feels like, what more does this woman have to learn? But they're saying this is the bridging of knowledge now. They're gonna come in and teach us a lot more than that we have to learn. And this is new. This is not a remembrance. Most of what they've taught me to teach others up to this point has been a remembrance of ancient wisdom. But
Yep.
what they're saying now is no, there's new information coming because you've never been in a time like this before on the planet. And all the teachers and the sages, that it's like we're sitting here going, well, what more do we have to teach? We've kind of, you know, we've taught them everything, and this is all the parameters. And they're saying no, there's new information coming in the way that things are shifting, energy is shifting. There's new information, I think, coming around the astrology in terms of, I don't know, they're talking about the mechanics of it. What is the mechanics
I
of
didn't know that you.
astrology?
This is. I'm so glad I hopped on with you, because you are the fourth person within the last 2 weeks to have said to me that there's a lot more information coming in, and new information, and that's why I have to, you know, cut back on workload and sit quiet and receive. So the mechanics.
Quantum mechanics is what they're saying
Quantum,
around
it
it.
becomes, certainly with the Kuiper Belt objects, we're getting further away from, oh, how can I say? Um, well, certainly the Kuiper Belt objects operate on quantum principles, let's say,
Wow.
because although they're attached very much, in the ones I've studied so far, we've got so many more to go, attached to the earth and ancient knowledge of the earth and shamanism and healing and blending with all of nature, you know, plants speaking to us, animals speaking to us, forest breathing, etc. At the same time, they operate on a quantum principle of helping us to set focus, intention, achieving the frequency that we want to experience further, and then just letting it go to the cosmos.
Steering it. We're moving into a new dimension, aren't we, Pam? And this is it.
Totally.
We're bridging across. There's going to be so much more. And I don't, for some reason, they're also showing me things like the crop circles and how these are all nudges in this language of the soul that they're teaching us to move into, to really listen to this. And until now, it seems like it's been nudges for the likes of us, but now there's going to be a lot more information. It's for everybody. All this knowledge is for everybody. And that's the thing. It's been kept so secret, hasn't it?
That's really important. And when you were talking about the step pyramid, were you referring to the pyramids in Mexico, Alexandra?
I was actually talking about Saqqara in Egypt. I actually went there a
Okay.
couple of years ago, but the ones in Mexico, what were you going to say about them? Because I've been
Yeah,
there as
it's so
well.
interesting. They've been built on the same astronomical principles. Both the pyramids in Egypt and the pyramids in Mexico have their passageways at 23.5 degrees. So that is the optimum angle from which to see the eclipses.
And that's our Earth's axial
Absolutely,
tilt.
absolutely, to the ecliptic. So, and the Mayan pyramid, they were very evolved astronomically, and they actually had observatories on top of the pyramids. I mean,
Wow.
they're incredibly evolved. You know, we're like barbarians now compared to.
I wholeheartedly believe that the technology was so superior to what we have now, and
Yeah.
what we're working with is energetic tech that they had managed to use on a physical level. But a lot of, I think, the light language and the maths, it's just, we're only at the beginning of it, aren't we? We're only, it's the frequency, but they managed to use it on such a level that they could change the physical reality with it. I do believe that. And
We're going to really get a lot more of this, how malleable our reality is. And this is partly Saturn moving through Pisces, because Pisces dissolves linear time, which is very connected to Saturn, and 3D reality, very connected. So that's why we're going to have these slippages of time and reality. And people are going to think they're going crazy because suddenly they're, you know, further down the road than they thought they were, or they're certainly, it was suddenly in a past life or a future life, although they were all parallel lives, of course. And so this is going to mean that we become less dense, we're much lighter beings, we're flowing with just universal energy. And a whole new layer of light came in on the 22nd of March. I don't know if you felt that, but it's something that I may do a sort of mini video on this, because several people who didn't understand the astrology, who don't follow astrology, were saying exactly the same thing, that we're now in phase 2.
one of my questions was actually going to be, so all these strange physiological, ascension symptoms, the time slippage, is that showing up in the astrology? I'm guessing it definitely is, but how is that showing up in the
It's
astrology?
definitely showing up in the discovery of the Kuiper belt objects, because that's a whole
Oh,
new octave of consciousness. So it's definitely showing up there. But it's kind of, and that's what makes these times very exciting, Alexandra, because it's like an added dimension. In fact, I've just today put out a video called Pluto in Aquarius, where I was looking at some of the historical cycles of Pluto in Aquarius, and I was saying in it, astrologers, just like economists or meteorologists, look back and say what happened last time in these cycles, and therefore what can we intelligently estimate will repeat. But in that video, I said, but it isn't same old, same old. It isn't, because we've got different dimensions. We've discovering the Kuiper belt objects, a whole new consciousness, but also a big part of this new dimension, which has never been part of astrology for certainly many lifetimes, thousands of years, is the photonic light, because the Earth is moving through this area of space over the galactic current sheet. We're getting this incredible concentration of high frequency light, this sparkly diamond light that we're embodying. So we're becoming the light body. And I have
that's
this,
what my book's about.
wow, and I had this amazing, I'll come back to
Amazing.
this in a minute, but I had this amazing dream, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, that I've mentioned in another video. And it just, part of the dream is I was in an empty room full of kind of pink peach sparkly light, like angelic light, and the only thing in the room was a mirror. And I walked over to the mirror and I was just full of light. I was just a light being. My eyes were extraordinary. And then I just started to levitate, and then the alarm went off. but it
You're
was
like, no.
it was pin sharp, pin sharp. So I don't think that was just a prediction or prophecy for me. It was a prophecy for many of us. We're moving, we're losing density. The other big thing that's happening is all of this cosmic and galactic energy, which I talk so much about, the solar flares. Because of the drop in the Earth's and the sun's magnetic field, we are much more open to the cosmos. So for instance, in 2018, we didn't have a single M-class flare. Now we can have 6 in a day. We didn't
Yeah.
have a single X-class flare in 2018. We had 7, I think, in 2022. We've had 7 in the first 3 months of 2023. It's just off the charts. And because an M-class flare, it's like the Richter scale, it's exponential. So an M-class flare is 10 times the strength of a C-class, and an X-class is 10 times the strength of an M-class. So this is absolute, and you know, we are open to this, as is the Earth. So the Earth is going through her own upgrade. The Schumann resonance is peaking madly with amplitude and strength. And all of this new galactic energy is coming in that contains new information from far galaxies for us. So we are sandwiched between the Earth and all this incredible photonic light and the cosmic energy. And that is why we are upgrading so fast.
Well,
And
we're
that
the
is,
bridge, aren't we? The bridge between heaven and earth. And I think this is, you know, I've definitely, I know you're probably as sensitive as me. I feel it all in my body, and I feel it all up my spine, and, you know, very, very sensitive to these energies coming in. But one thing I've learned over the course of my life, and this might be part of the new teachings coming through, is not so much to just sit in it and have to deal with it. Again, we can transcend it, we can use it. I love what you said about the energy becoming more malleable, because there are times when I can just reach out and grab handfuls of it and maneuver it, and you almost can change your reality
yeah.
through. Yeah, it is definitely quantum. It's absolutely phenomenal.
And I honestly believe, and I don't just say this, you know, for a nice thing to say, I honestly believe in my bones, Alexandra, that we create our reality. We pull it out of the quantum soup on a daily basis. Yes, we have a set of mathematical probabilities in our chart that we'll experience certain things at certain times, but we can, as I say, we have huge latitude with this. So particularly if we're in a like-minded group, ideally physically together, that magnifies the energy of the group to bring in some beautiful, you know, beautiful things, to experience new Earth more quickly than we otherwise would if we all set this intention that that's what we're going to do, and it's going to be loving and beautiful and peaceful and compassionate. We create a kind of energetic wave, an energetic hologram, that every time those like-minded people get together on the same frequency, we're just building the wave. It's like a tsunami, we're building the wave. And I was at a mass meditation at a local place for the equinox, and there were probably about 200 of us, and several people saw dragons in the sky while we were meditating. Another person saw a phoenix. There's very strong dragon energy on the land there. But of course, all of the energy lines are waking up now, and the dragon energy lines are waking up. Lots of people are talking about dragons all of a sudden. So this is incredibly empowering energy for us to start to use that we've had no idea about for lifetimes. You know, we've lived, I think, in such victimhood, myself included. You know, that's just the way we thought life operated, that we had to always, I don't want to suggest I'm any kind of renegade with a sun, moon, Pisces, but you know, we've always been obedient, and you work hard at school, and you do what the teacher says, and you do what the policeman says, and you do what a parent says. I think all of that sort of potentially sent us into some subservience or victimhood. That is all turning around, because we are stepping into our divine power, our divine center, our divine knowing, to say, no, the power lies within me to create something beautiful.
It's amazing, actually, you talking about that, because I know for myself, probably for you, and I'm sure many people watching this, a lot of what's going on in the collective is being reflected in our individual lives and experiences. And I've been sitting for the last couple of years, not so much during the pandemic, but since the pandemic, in a huge, what can only be described as a crossroads. and the door through the crossroads on a personal level hasn't opened yet. And I'm one of these people that I love to just bulldoze ahead. My Aries rising, I'm like, go for it, let's go. I can't sit still. But I'm being forced by the universe to sit still. And in this sitting still, I'm feeling a new level of bodily connection and grounding that I haven't ever felt before. And what I'm being shown is I've just finished a course of trauma therapy, interestingly. So I went through a huge court case during the pandemic, and that brought up a lot of childhood stuff. But I realize, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do, I get shown the global picture through my personal experience. So I actually was able to zoom out on my personal experience and go, wow, because of childhood and the chaos I grew up with and the survival and everything, and looking at the bigger picture is like when you start to claim your power back from any trauma or from anywhere you've felt disempowered or on the back foot, and you start to come back into your power, it can actually be really shocking, because you then start to realize, wow, I've played a part in this. I've given my power away. I've allowed myself to be bullied, or I've allowed myself to be hoodwinked or manipulated. And then you start looking at yourself and going, why did you do that to yourself? And I can really see this in the collective. We're waking up, but there's such a level of almost cognitive dissonance, because it's quite terrifying to realize what's happened on this planet without naming names or saying too much on YouTube. But when we start to really see what's going on, it can be, it can push you into deeper levels of, I want to say, trauma release, or the need to release that embedded embodied trauma, and this level of, probably societally, we've been living in complex PTSD for a really long time as a collective, I think. But it was really interesting as I looked at as I've been sitting in my own kind of soup of it all, going, oh God, what were you doing? Why did you tolerate all of that? I'm like, wow, this is really bigger picture stuff. This is really what we're coming out of. And I just say, and I know you say similar message, is that we have to be super gentle with ourselves and with each other and come back into loving compassion. And there go my lights. This is always the yes. Guys, whenever it's a big yes, the lights go out.
I absolutely agree with you, Alexandra, 100%. And I think so many of us, again, who are on a spiritual path, experience a lot of trauma in our lives, childhood and beyond, because we had to see the darkness before we can fully appreciate the light. If it's easy peasy, we wouldn't appreciate it so much. But there's also a kind of conviction of, we are absolutely never going to do that again. And I think people who are waking up now are going to wake up pretty speedily in the next few months. I think it's going to be pretty rapid because of the energies and the necessity to wake up. And you put that together with the time and the reality slippages. And if you're not very spiritually aware, you could think you're going crazy. It could lead people into psychosis. And that's why I try and put a lot of information out there to say, look, this is what's happening. And it's actually for a wonderful reason, because we're upgrading to a different level in our physicality than we've ever done before in any lifetime. And that's incredibly exciting. So look at it with excitement, not terror. But if somebody isn't awake and starting to experience these bodily, can't sleep, extreme fatigue, tinnitus, whatever, all of those symptoms brought on by the cosmic energy, and they get the reality slippage, it's going to be a lot to cope with, because I think this is going to happen in a very short time. A lot of it this year.
I think I was listening to, it might have been your full moon video, and you were talking about the cutting off of heads, or the mental.
Oh yes.
And notice that there's a lot around mental health and mental illness going on at the moment. It's so interesting to me that the astrology reflects that. It's like, don't lose your head. And that's the importance of really grounding and really staying in the present. What are your personal tools that you use at this time to navigate your way through all of this?
Yeah, really simple, actually, Alexandra. Nothing complicated, or you've got to study or read, really simple. As often as I can, weather permitting, because as we know, we've had a pretty filthy few months here with weather. Bare feet on the grass, bare feet on the grass, and just absorb the stillness and try not to label things as that's a tree, that's a bird, that's the sun. It's just morph into the oneness of it, and try and find just utter stillness and peace. Bring yourself back to your center, and you may have a mantra: I'm a divine being, or I am the light, I'm the love, I'm the truth. Blossom Goodchild's a wonderful mantra, I am the light, I'm the love, I'm the truth, I am. It can be a very simple mantra, or just completely silent, in stillness. Find that 0 point of stillness and do that as often as you can with bare feet on the grass, because that's the best antioxidant you can get. It sucks a lot of the toxins out of the body. It boosts your energy. I mean, you can look at it with blood samples on groundology.com, pre and post feet on the grass after 45 minutes, and the physiology, the literal blood is so different 45 minutes later. You could see it's an incredible demonstration. So I do that. I do breath work every day. I used to do a lot of yogic breath work and buteyko, and I do a combination of that called soma breath, which is a combination of kind of Wim Hof, buteyko, and yogic breath. I do that every day, just for half an hour or so, but I'm very disciplined about that. I meditate, and also I really spend time in nature. When I, every morning, my sacred time is being in nature. Luckily, I live in the New Forest, so I go for beautiful walks in the woods, and that is I'm just again absorbed by nature, and my mind can kind of ruminate and roll around, and I don't have to think specific thoughts, my brain is just kind of, and often that's where the insights come. I can suddenly get an insight into, okay, that's the connection to that. Or, wow, yeah, I've just seen something that I didn't see before. So that is really precious time, because then I come back and, I spend 10 hours on the computer. So that's very important. Also, I'm giving in to extreme tiredness right now, because that's my symptom with all of this, giving into extreme tiredness. But also, because sometimes it's very hard to sleep, I am going to bed quite early so I can have at least a good run at attempting to sleep. But I'm also, when I'm awake, I'm using that time productively. I live in love, peace, and bliss. I live in love, peace, and bliss. And so find a mantra that is really positive, really simple, that even when you're kind of only in a semi-state of awakeness, you can roll around your head, because it does have an effect. Those phrases have coding in them, and they really have an effect on our frequency. And actually, I try and keep life incredibly simple in a way. I mean, I say I'm a bumpkin, and friends say, oh, don't put yourself down. I say, I'm not. I mean, that's my secret sauce. I'm a bumpkin because I work from home, I live from home, I have all my food delivered. That was partly because of the pandemic, but I haven't been to a shop in 3 years now, which is just fine. Don't plan to do it again. And, I have my morning walk in nature, and I come back and I think, I write, I work, and that's it. And yes, of course, I have friends and they're wonderful connections too. But broadly, my life is incredibly simple, and I will not let negative stuff come in. I know about the negative stuff because we all do, we've all lived through it. I haven't listened to the news in 3 years, don't plan to do it again. If anybody, because people send me stuff all day long, and if people send me anything that's negative, within a few seconds, just, I know that. We've done that to death. We don't have to do it to death anymore. Let me walk my talk, and let my focus be fully on creating something beautiful. That's what these times are about. That's why we elected to come here in our madness when we didn't read the small print. That's why we're here. And so don't make a pig's ear of the biggest leap in human evolution that there's ever been.
Let's get it right, humanity. I'm completely with you. I've done a heck of a lot of shadow work in my time, and I was actually saying to a fellow healer this morning, we can't get stuck in the shadow. It's great to be aware and but it's all about integration. We can't go get stuck there and get caught up in the fear. We've got to stay positive, and I think keeping it simple is absolutely the way of it. They're nudging me to talk about water. This was something that actually helped to bring this interview about, was the you mentioning the water. What's going on with the water at the moment in your book?
Well, water is going to become a bigger deal. It's going to become a bigger deal, I think, principally for three reasons astrologically. First, Saturn has just moved into Pisces for 3 years as of the 8th of March. And so that is putting emphasis on all things watery. And I had a whole video on that. And one of the aspects of that is the importance of structured water, etc. Another astrological aspect of it is Sedna, the dwarf planet that has an 11,400-year orbit, so the furthest out dwarf planet that we're aware of. Within her own mythology is she's the Inuit goddess of the seas, the icy wastes of the Arctic, and her whole myth is about how it's very interesting actually in terms of what's happening now, but her whole myth was she married someone who promised all kinds of things and a wonderful life, and he actually didn't keep his promises and he betrayed her very badly. So her father came to take her away from that. They were in a canoe on the sea in a storm. Big storm blew up. And because the water was coming over the canoe, her father threw her over the canoe to save himself. And when she tried to climb back into the canoe, he chopped her fingers off. I mean, it's not a great story. Chopped her fingers off, and she and her fingers floated down to the icy depths and became beautiful sea creatures of turtles and whales and dolphins. So this, a big theme, is clearly the betrayal of the patriarchy by the husband and also by the father. But the whole myth is around the seas and the importance of the seas and the richness. I think we are absolutely not a millimeter into understanding what the sea has to offer. And then we have the dwarf planet Haumea, which has about a 283-year orbit, and that has just in the last few months moved into the water sign of Scorpio. So I think we're going to understand an awful lot about the depths of the ocean. I talked in a recent video about this French chap called René Quinton, and he lived at the turn of the previous century. He died in the early 1900s, but he discovered that the sort of structure of marine plasma is very similar to the structure of blood plasma.
I was about to ask you about the plasma. This is
yeah. So
amazing.
he started, I mean, please don't do this at home, but he started to inject sick people with marine plasma, having sort of filtered it, microfiltered it, etc. And they turned their health around very, very, very quickly. You can still buy Quinton water in pharmacies in Europe.
Wow.
So I think the healing powers of the ocean with marine plasma, with many of the nutrients, etc. We have so much to discover. And I also feel, in a way that I can only intuit, I can't explain logically, that we think we have terribly polluted the waters, and we have. We're not off the hook. We have done terrible things to the oceans and the seas, but I have a feeling that somehow that pollution will be turned around very quickly.
Yes, I got a similar message. They said there's going to be some sort of it's like a molecule. Somebody's going to discover or work with a certain molecule that is going to be able to dissolve the plastics. That is going, and I've seen it. They keep showing me this vision. I'm like, it seems fantastical, but it's like something that's going to be able to just clean it up by harmlessly dissolving it and transmuting it. And I'm just like looking at it going, this is all the miraculous stuff that I'm sure we used to do back in the day in ancient Egypt, just through, but they keep saying we need to, as a humanity, unlock the science of water, because it's the key of life. If we think of the womb and the primordial waters, it's where life materializes, or things materialize from the immaterial into the material. And if we can really crack that coding and really look at the molecular structure of the water, that's where the co-creation, it's like the lens of co-creation. And that's the plasma, isn't it? I mean, obviously we're full of water in our bodies. I think obviously also as our frequency raises and we become our vibration quickens, we're going to become more watery sort of beings, or, you know, like walking through walls and whatnot. But it seems fantastical, but I'm starting to really believe that it's not just possible, that it is happening, and this is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And to your point, Alexandra, it's already been discovered that there's a fungus, a mushroom, which thrives on plastic. It eats plastic.
So it's already happening.
It's already happening. And also there's this wonderful young chap I've mentioned a couple of times called Boyan Slat. I think he's an Eastern European guy, and he's got a non-profit organization called Ocean Cleanup. And his project, and he's got a team of quite young people all over the world, and he is dedicated to cleaning up 90% of the floating plastic pollution in the oceans. And it's a fairly simple kind of scoopy thing, I think, you know, but he's doing it. He's been doing it for years. So this is already happening. But I think exactly what you say, the thing about salt water, because salt can take an electrical charge, and that's how life can form. That's an important part of it. I think also primary water, which is under the mantle of the earth and is completely pure and unpolluted and kind of springs up in geysers and springs sometimes, that, you know, that has so much to teach us, because that's sort of barely been discovered, but it's got more water in primary water than all of the oceans put together. The structure of water, and how this is going back to Emoto's work, and of course the wonderful Veda Austin.
Blessing the water. I really extol the virtues of the Water for Peace project. I don't know if you know about that, but it's totally free, and we can all just send love to the water. And I think this is like the consciousness of it, that it holds the memory.
And how it changes the structure of water. I mean, you can look at all of Masaru's amazing images online, and how literally sending love to the water physically changes the geometry of the crystals that appear. So this is such a clear demonstration of what we're doing in the plasma, which we think is just invisible ether, because we can see it in the water in his work. And Veda Austin's doing some astonishing work with this as well. And she describes water as living consciousness, because we're, you know, we drink water, we you know, we urinate it out, but we are therefore in the flow of life. And the more we can take in beautiful geometry and structured water, that's going to affect every cell in our body, because we're over 90% water. So this becomes very exciting in terms of our understanding of we are water. We're water in this kind of shell of a meat suit. And the importance, the quality of water, I think, will become huge in the future.
The metaphor of it too. They keep shouting at me, you know, as the oceans rising, water rising. And, you know, my guides will often say, in the water is the daughter, meaning the feminine. So the feminine is rising, you know, it's symbolic as well as physical. It's all encoded messaging. It's quite phenomenal, isn't it? The layers of it.
Wow. I mean, you know, we are just going to be going in leaps and bounds in our understanding from this point on. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be thrilling, but it's like going through a, you know, huge horse race almost, over the jumps, you know. Can I still hang on? Can I still keep up with all of these understandings? Because they're going to be flooding in, I think, for many of us. And often I can kind of listen to people who have had similar insights, but then I look at it with an astrological lens and kind of join up all those dots and think, wow, you know, that is absolutely amazing, because I can translate it with the astrology to say, yeah, that's absolutely right, that understanding should be coming in now. So it's very, very exciting. So I really want people to see these times as exciting as opposed to terrifying, because I think there's so much to come.
Absolutely. I love your historical knowledge is incredible. Did you study history before you studied astrology, or have you learned a lot about history through the astrology?
I've learned a lot about history through the astrology, and I tend to have a very good memory, particularly a good memory for numbers. I should have got a job in a casino, actually. I would have made a I just have, my father was a brilliant mathematician. I mean, genius level mathematician. And I absolutely do not have his brain at all. I mean, he was kind of way ahead of me, but he was very focused in his life on numbers. And I think I've picked up just a little bit of that quality, because I just tend to remember, not, you know, phone numbers, registration plates, and it makes life quite helpful because you don't have to go and check all the time. It just registers, and I remember, so that shortcuts a lot of things. But yeah, I suppose I've just been studying for so many lifetimes for so long. It's fairly embedded. The
It all
importance in
sinks in,
history are
doesn't it?
embedded. And also, I just find it so interesting how astrology manifests, how we get the proof of the pudding. I do obviously my video updates and anticipate certain themes or certain experiences or qualities of energy playing out, and then bingo, you see them. We get the proof of the pudding. And that's why it's always helpful to get the validation, because it helps people have confidence in what's unfolding, and confidence for the good in where we're going as well.
I love it. I know you've just put a video up on it, but could you talk to us a tiny bit about Pluto in Aquarius? Just what are the main kind of things that we need to look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just put that up today. And Pluto, it's important to realize that Pluto this year will only stay in Aquarius for 2.5 months, from the 23rd of March till the 11th of June. So we're just going to get a glimpse this time. Next year, it spends 9 months in Aquarius. And then from November 2024, 20 years. 20 years. So we're looking from now at a 21-year cycle. And so this year, because it's mostly in Capricorn for 9 months, it's very much about demolition of the old world, the old structures, because the life force and energy is just being taken. A lot about truth, a lot about revelation. So that's going to be the quality of this year. Pluto is the planet of power. And historically, if I look back at cycles, there has always been a shift of power from top-down structures, governments, corporations. In the past, it was the monarchy or the Catholic Church or whatever was the overpowerful vertical structure in society at the time. And now it tends to be governments, corporations, institutions. And as Pluto gradually moves into Aquarius, that power is going to start to shift to the people in a bigger and bigger way. And it isn't going to happen day one, month one, year one. It's going to be a gradual process. But it isn't necessarily in any, as I say, any kind of aggressive or violent way. It's we sense that we are taking back our sovereignty, our autonomy, our divinity in stepping into that power, because we can do so much energetically to change the collective. Sitting at home meditating on your sofa changes the collective, because we can't not affect the collective. Everything feeds into the collective like a drop in the ocean. And so we are going to see, I think, an extraordinary shift and it's a move to community, a move to collaboration, a move to society being birthed from the grassroots up. No longer from the top down. We're done with top down. And so we'll start to create our own world, and all over the world, because people write to me all the time, they are forming communities, they're buying land, they're growing food, and they are kind of taking themselves out of mainstream society, and they're all on the same kind of value system, the same wavelength, they agree with the same things. Aquarius is very linked to freedom, equality, humanitarianism. I think we will see big changes in aviation. I think the kind of air travel we have at the moment will, not exist for very much longer. It'll be a different kind of air travel, which will be much faster. Could be flying cars.
Supersonic coming back, or
yeah.
Get a rocket ship to Australia, just go up into space and down again.
Yeah, and ultimately
we'll
be able to teleport. We'll just think our way there.
That's it. Yes, we'll teleport through the water.
Absolutely. So that's where we're headed, that we won't need external devices, but in the interim, there will be methods of transport, particularly air transport, that are much faster. Galactic connections, that's going to come in a much, much, much bigger way. Galactic connections, channeling, information. As we start to explore further out with our air travel of whatever kind, we will start to come into contact with these loving beings who have really held sacred space for us to help
the
us in our
community again.
Yeah. And we'll step back into this remembrance of that's where we came from. Even Dr. Brian Cox, who's not a fan of astrology, says we're made of stardust.
Yeah.
That's where we came from. And so that is going to be very exciting to rediscover our galactic heritage, because we all came from, I think we've explored a lot of different galaxies out there, but we may have one, predominant one. We may be more Arcturian or more Palladian or whatever. And we're going to start to experience that. So our Earth is going to appear so minute in that perspective, so tiny, but it's a looking out to the heavens and what is going to come in for us that's so exciting.
There's so much, like, I feel like there's such a deepening into our humility. We've been forced back into it, haven't we? And it's just, I think it does make me feel really emotional. It's like, we've been so blinkered for so long as a collective, but what a beautiful awakening. How it's awful. It's been awful, but it's also really beautiful. And I think if we can really just sit back in our compassion for ourselves and each other, we're really going to find our way through, aren't we? I'm just looking at the clock. Pam, I can talk to you for days and days and days. I think this is going to be hopefully a continued conversation. Is there any last minute messages that you would like to make sure that people know before we finish our conversation?
Yeah, I think just keep it really simple. Be in nature, bare feet on the grass, weather permitting, whenever you can. Trust in this opening up of dimensions. Trust that we're stepping much more fully into our divinity, much more fully into our multidimensionality. This is starting to happen with this reality and time slippages, so quickly. And just have a very simple mantra of something like, I live in love and peace and bliss. I live in, and let it just roll around your brain when you can't think of anything better, but find stillness, find peace, and just do not engage emotionally with the bad news. It's all happening, because if you engage emotionally with the bad news, you're actually giving life support to what you absolutely don't want more of.
Love it. Love it. Oh, somebody also said that in Feng Shui terms, this is really interesting. In Feng Shui terms, we're coming out of an era that is known as youngest son, and we're coming into an era of eldest daughter. So the wise woman is on the rise. So,
oh, goody.
so amazing.
I'm in fashion. Yeah, wonderful.
That's it. Yeah, exactly, girl. Go for it.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, I sense that is true, and it's partly Chariclo's archetype. Holding sacred space silently to heal people, to heal others, just by your state of being. That's what we've got to cultivate. This peaceful, loving state of being, particularly as we go through this year, and we may have to have a lot of compassion for other people. Cultivating. We don't have to say a lot. It's holding that loving state of being, often in silence, that will heal people.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so, so much, beautiful woman, for your time today. It's been such an honor. And as I said, I could talk to you forever. Just to let people know, if you haven't heard of Pam Gregory, I'd be highly surprised, but please do follow her videos. You're only on YouTube. Is that right, Pam?
YouTube, and it's important that you follow Pam Gregory Astrology, because there's a naughty person that's using Pam Gregory Astrologer.
Oh,
Pam Gregory Astrology. You can easily see it by the difference in subscriber numbers.
I have your links, so I'll put all the links below the video so people have the correct way to find you. And also, people, you can get your free birth chart on Pam's website.
Yep. Yeah, and all the videos are there on my website, pamgregory.com. I write a very long monthly newsletter, again for free. You can access via the website. So there's a lot of free stuff that I'm putting out there. I do have training videos at a pretty minimal cost if people want to buy them, but other than that, everything's free. I am very much in service right now.
I can't wait for your next book too, because it feels like there's definitely new information coming.
You are the fourth person who's told me that in the last 2 weeks.
You're like, oh God, any more service work to do, universe?
Yes, I have to learn not to sleep at all, but yeah.
I know. We're just getting started, I think.
I've really enjoyed the conversation, Alexandra. You asked some great questions and different questions, so I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much, honey. So lovely to meet you properly, and hopefully we'll connect again soon. And thank you everyone for watching. So, so much love, and see you soon.